I think the evidence is very strong and actually quite compelling for the inclusion of seed oils to lower things like cardiovascular risk and improve mortality risk.
Who's that guy? In all seriousness, Rich Roll posted this clip from our podcast episode yesterday, and as you can imagine, it stirred up quite the controversy, despite the evidence being very clear and consistent, as I mentioned. One person who took issue was James D. Nicole Antonio, pardon the pronunciation, and despite having blocked me so I couldn't even reply, he commented and claimed that Chris Ramsden had conducted 2 meta-analyses that showed that replacing saturated and trans fats with seed oils increase the risk of cardiovascular and all-cause mortality. Well, let's take a look. A meta-analysis is only as good as the studies it includes, and I believe he's referring to these 2 meta-analyses, both of which included the Sydney Diet Heart Study. In this study, the seed oil was actually a partially hydrogenated margarine that was rich in trans fat. The control group, on the other hand, didn't get these trans fat-rich products. So the study actually shows that trans fats are worse than saturated fats. It did not replace trans fats with seed oils. In fact, the seed oils were packaged with trans fats. After somebody pointed this out to him, he seemed to acknowledge that flaw. So if it's the case that the Sydney study is flawed and that played a big part in both meta-analyses, he's essentially admitting that the meta-analyses are flawed. But let's keep going. He then pivots to other studies like the Minnesota Coronary Survey and the Rose Corn Oil Trial, both of which also have their flaws. For one, the Minnesota study also used a margarine that was likely very rich in trans fats. And about 3/4 of the participants failed to stick with the diet and have cholesterol measurements up to at least a year. But he doesn't mention that. And the Rose trial was very small and was pretty lacking in baseline health information for the participants. Nor did it even identify a statistically significant increase in risk. And I could go on and on with issues with these trials. Now, if we look at a meta-analysis that doesn't include these studies with all their flaws, we actually see that seed oils lower the risk of coronary heart disease relative to saturated fats. So please pass this on to James and ask him to unblock me so we can actually have some discourse. He seemed confident commenting when I couldn't reply, but let's have a live discussion where we each present our data, discuss the merits and the flaws of each side, and allow the viewers to decide who presents the better case.